Hello, Instagram. This is Arielle Sadan, founder of Revel&Awe and executive coach, and we are going live today for our February live with Betty Wang, who is a Feng Shui expert. And I'm really excited to have her join us today because she's going to give all of us some great tips and tricks, but also she'll give me some tips and tricks because Lord knows I need it. Here she is. Is it working? Hello.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome to our live today.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
I was telling everyone that you're going to give us some great tips and tricks, but real talk, this is for me. So I think given that everybody is working from, or maybe not everybody, but so many people are working from home right now, having some semblance of direction or certainty or help support to feel like they're doing things better in a more sustainable fashion, like unlocking some deep hidden potential for themselves is much needed these days. So we're all very excited that you're here with us. Before we dig into all of your juicy tips, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into Feng Shui?
Yeah, I got into Feng Shui a few years back. I from an Asian household, I've always had Feng Shui masters coming through my home throughout the years. And I always thought, how mysterious. How do you know all of these, seemingly random recommendations? And my family, relatives, people that I know that sort of believe in this practice, they wholeheartedly believe them. And it's just something that is recurring. And I just thought, do they feel it? Do they just know in their body? Like, what is it that make them a master, and how do they know all of these things? It's just seemingly too magical. So as an adult, when I have my own space, I thought, oh, maybe I should Google this. Everybody was learning everything on Google. So I thought I'll give it a shot too. And it was a lot of very tangible, seemingly very easy steps to do to feng shui your home. Add a dab of red here, or move your bed this way, or add a little crystal somewhere else. And I thought, well, that's not exactly like how I was exposed to it. So there was a little bit of a disconnect for me. And I started digging deeper. So I started Googling more, going down that rabbit hole, and finally came across classical feng shui, which is what I practice now. And from there, I realized, oh, this is what those masters were talking about. This is sort of like the calculations that they were referencing, the sheets of papers that have just scribbles all over it that I have no idea what was on there. So it sort of connected the dot for me. And since then, that methodology sort of piqued my interest, and I just went, it's my business.
That's amazing. One of the things that really sticks with me is this idea of bringing the traditions of our past into like a more modern world. And something that so often happens is as things get more accessible and people can just Google things, a lot of traditions that are based in so much richness and their own versions of science and logic and history, they can get really diluted. So it sounds really like you've been able to reconnect to that really traditional modality and bring it into like a super modern age and help people integrate kind of seamlessly. You're kind of like a translator between history and today, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hope to do, right? I found it mysterious to start with. So the path of me learning feng shui and understanding and deciphering what is sort of the watered down version, the clickbait stuff, versus things that are actually will create results for people. it took me a long time, years, and still to this day, I'm thrown questions about, hey, is this real feng shui or is this not? And so I really want to be that bridge for people to sort of be comfortable asking those questions, because I've for sure asked those same questions some years ago or even yesterday, right? So real feng shui, I wholeheartedly believe will help you transform your life, but on the other side, sort of clickbait stuff can also transform your life. If you're lucky, it's for the better, but if you're not, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Mm. Can you give us an example of something that's maybe more clickbait and not effective for most people?
Sure, sure. If you Google feng shui map on Google, you'll have these images of these Bagua maps, and they'll be color coded to say southeast is a particular has a particular theme. It is a particular element, um, and it's basically very simple. So if you're looking for love, you enhance that corner for uh, whatever they suggest, like put more greens or wood plants or things like that. And that in and of itself is not wrong, but it is the very sort of basic level.
Mm.
That map is not accurate. It cannot be applied to everybody because we're all very unique. Our home is the same. Our home faces a different direction. Some are beach homes, some are in the mountains, or us in New York City, they're all different. So we can't just use that one map to say, well, the Northwest is this thing for everybody. So that map had me just spinning around for years, just so confused, because I would try to correlate that map with what I was learning in my sort of classical studies. And for the longest time, it was just conflicting each other, and sometimes it will match up, not to. So anytime you Google feng shui, that map is out there. So it's
Yeah, I
unfortunate.
mean, what really sticks with me is that there isn't just a one size fits all approach. And so often, when you're just starting out in the search for anything, that one size fits all is like an easy on ramp into things, but it's not necessarily going to be super effective if you don't actually have somebody who tailors it to you. I mean, I definitely find that also with coaching. There are so many different types of coaches, and not every coach is the right coach for each client, and vice versa. And
Mhm.
finding that right match and finding that person who can really tailor their approach to you as an individual is so important to unlock the best results. And similarly, I luckily face south. But I don't know how that might differ from how someone should set up their home from someone whose apartment faces west or east or north. Or, I mean, I face south, but it's Manhattan. So we're at an angle anyway. So I don't even know what that means.
Exactly. And what does facing south even mean, right? You could be referring to your current sort of setup right now. So your desk, you're facing south, or is it your building that's facing south? Because you could very well be in the back of the building or to the side of the building, and
Mm.
like, where exactly are you facing? So in feng shui terms, when we talk about facing, it is where is the main entrance, either to your home or to your building. And there's a lot of variation, right? Because you could have especially in Manhattan, you could be in a tall building and there's traffic all around you. But, we also have to consider, well, what kind of traffic is it? Is it foot traffic? Is it car traffic? Is there a train going behind your home? How close in proximity is that? So really it's to understand where is the most active around you, because
Mm.
that changes your facing, because you could be facing north, but if most of the activity is happening on the east side, and whatever is in front of your building or your home is just foot traffic, then that's not your facing. So there's so much consideration aside from just where's my door, where's my apartment door or my building door.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so complicated. So, because there's so many considerations. So, maybe can you give us like a few, actually, before I even go into asking for tips and tricks, I want to backtrack and talk about how, the point of today is to help people figure out how to feng shui their workplaces.
Mhm.
And again, that's so important because so many of us are working from home and we all have really different setups. Some people are living alone and maybe they have the space to have a separate workspace. Maybe they don't. Maybe you're living with roommates. Maybe you're living with family members. Maybe there's multiple generations living with you. Maybe you're sharing a room. There's so many considerations that each of us has to make when we're even attempting to have a workspace set up in our home. And, for those of us who are lucky enough to have dedicated space for that, that's
Mhm.
awesome. And, not everybody has that space or even that time to really step away from the rest of their home life to dedicate to their workspace. So I guess with that in mind, I mean, where do you even start to think about incorporating some of these feng shui ideas into your workspace at all? Like what's step zero?
Well, like you said, there's a lot that goes into it, and I can't just get sort of your
Okay.
they want, right? There are a few things that are
Mhm.
specific to 2021 that we can talk about. And these are things that, like you said, you might be able to change, but you might not be able to based on, like you said, if you live with other people or you just have restrictions in how you can arrange your space. But it's certainly something to keep in mind. And because we're all working from home, just know that like my recommendation, if you can't, if you're sitting in a spot or facing a direction where I said do not sit there or face that way, but you have no other way, just know that when you have an important call, a pitch, a presentation, or any sort of important Zoom calls, just know to avoid that sector. Or
Mm,
when you're preparing for those important meetings, avoid that spot. Maybe work from your kitchen counter or somewhere else just for that component, because you want to be able to minimize as much as you can, but we still have to live. We can't just turn our whole life and space upside down just because a feng shui master said that's a bad direction this year, right? Because that'll cause you more headache and misery
yeah.
than actually being able to implement what I'm saying.
Okay. So basically, if you can incorporate some of these things, great. If not, that's okay. But when it really, really counts,
Mhm.
try to be really mindful about, direction and some of the tips that you're going to give us because that's when it's going to make the most impact.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
And just know that it's just for this year. Next year it'll change again. So do the best you can.
Okay, cool, cool. Okay, so I think we're ready then for some magic. And if you need me to show my workspace as an example, um, I'm willing to sacrifice and to embarrass myself. But we can use me as a guinea pig.
Okay, well, let's start out with some of the directions that I have prepared. And then if we have extra time, we can talk about your space. How's
Okay, I guess I can wait.
that? Okay, so the first tip that I have is do not sit, as in have your office space in the southeast sector of your home. So if you think about your home or your apartment's overall floor plan, if you stand in the middle of your apartment, if you sort of mark an X on your floor plan, wherever that center space is, find the southeast quadrant, whatever room that is. Ideally, that is a bathroom for this year. But if it happens to be your bedroom or your office space, I would suggest that if you have other options, to move from away from the southeast sector.
Okay.
So that includes actually sitting in that spot and facing that direction. So when I say facing, I'm actually, where are you? So right now I'm facing my computer. And so what you would do is you take your compass and you sort of just check where that is facing. So don't face the southeast or sit in the southeast sector.
And is that just for work? Or is that just like in general? Like if my sofa has one of its seats in the southeast corner of my apartment, should I not sit in that seat at all?
Yeah. So this is for long term. So if you're just gonna be on your living room couch for maybe an hour at night or whatever it is, it's not a big deal. But what I'm focused on is you're working 8 hours a day or you're sleeping for 8 hours. These are extensive time. And if you think about over the weeks and months of this year that you're going to be sitting and spending time in that spot, it is a lot. So if it's
Mhm.
just a couple of hours here and there, it's not a big deal. But it's for extended periods of time that I would suggest you move away from that space.
Okay, cool. That's helpful. And I'm also going to note that whoever is watching us on Instagram right now, you guys can also drop questions or comments, and we'll try to answer them as they come up. And if you're watching a recording of this, drop them in the comments, so we can make sure that your questions get answered. I know this is like a hot topic right now because we all want to unlock our best selves, especially in 2021, given how challenging last year was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, with that said, okay, southeast extensive periods,
Yeah.
avoid.
Mm-hmm.
What else should we be keeping our eyes open for?
The other direction that you should avoid is southwest.
No.
Wait, sorry, northwest.
Oh, oh, thank God. Okay, yes.
So same thing applies here. Don't sit in that sector and don't face that sector.
Okay.
Yeah. And you really have to be careful because when we sit, right, we don't sit straight on all the time. Sometimes you sort of slouch a little, maybe you turn because you have a desk or you have a book or a laptop that's like on the side, slanted. Like, don't get into all of that nitty gritty and, be afraid to turn to the southeast or the northwest side of your desk because that's too much to sort of handle on a daily basis. Just know that, like, make sure your desk is not sort of slanted to those directions. As long as your desk is straight and avoiding those directions, you're fine. How you twist and turn your body, not a big deal.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
helpful. Cool. So take notes on whatever direction you want, but have your desk facing not towards the northwest. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So far, at least, judging my own directions, I think I'm doing okay. Curious to
Good.
hear how other people are doing as they listen to these tips. Um, okay, cool. And if we think about why it is that we want to avoid some of those directions or those places in the home where we might set up our office or just, sit working if we don't have a dedicated workspace, what is it about that like why should we avoid that?
Right. So everything that I'm telling you right now is derived from this flying star chart for the year 2021. So what that means is in the classical world of Feng Shui, there are numbers that represent different energies. And these numbers have an element that's associated with it and a significance. What does it mean when it is timely and good? And what does it mean when it's untimely and bad? So what are the likely sort of implications that plays out? And so with that, every year the numbers change. And this year, specific numbers landed in specific directions. And that's how I sort of derived where you should avoid and where you should sort of enhance.
Okay. So if we've sort of touched on some of the major places or directions to avoid,
Mhm.
what are some of the directions or places in our home that we should enhance?
Well, so by enhancing, the best you can do is sit in that area or spend more time there. Or if it's absolutely not possible, for whatever reason, I would suggest that you add a moving object there. So, an open face clock is a perfect example, right? It just rotates 24 hours a day,
Mm,
goes on and on and on. Just something to move the energy there. So, if you cannot sit in that spot, I would suggest getting a moving thing. And it doesn't have to be a clock, but I think that's the one thing that I can think of right now that is continuously moving. But if anybody else has a better idea, please, I would love to know.
So what are the spots that we should be enhancing?
Yes. So the South this year has a very auspicious number. So you can enhance that area, or if you can move to that spot, that'll be ideal. You can face it. So if you can sit in the South and also face South, ideal. But I think there's one caveat that I wanted to mention is everything that I'm suggesting right now is purely based on the flying star chart of the year. Again, this is very broad because it applies to everybody. But your permanent charts, basically when you moved in and that's sort of tailored to you, that chart might say something different. So depending on what that looks like, it's not 100% guarantee that the 2021 chart sort of matches it 100% to give you this boost. So just keep that in mind. So,
Okay.
that's why it's really important to know the specifics of your floor plan before you add on any sort of more generalized things that sort of applies to everybody.
Yeah, and I think going back to, that the generalized information versus the tailored information, we talked a bit about how this definitely applies in coaching. There are certain principles that apply to everybody, and at the same time, it won't necessarily have the biggest impact for an individual because you have unique needs and unique setups and different blocks and different things that you can really access more easily and different strengths and different energies and different birthdays as it pertains to feng shui. So understanding that these things are more broad, and we can do our best with these broadened tips and suggestions that you're giving. And at the same time, if we really want to get into it, having that individualized plan created is going to be really important so that we can really figure out the intricacies of how to um, enhance and better our chances of success this year.
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. Because I think that, in respect to coaching or in feng shui, like we're all human, we all live in a home, but who we are, our backgrounds, what kind of home we live in, that's all different. And we
Mhm.
cannot just say, because you're a human living in a home, X, Y, and Z applies to you. That's not how it works. And that's, I think, what makes my job interesting and your job interesting, because if everybody is the same, I don't think we'll have a job.
That's true. That's yeah. Indeed. Okay. So, if I think about some of what we've covered so far, we've talked about areas of the home to avoid spending extended periods of time in or facing for extended periods of time. And we've talked about how the South, spending time in the South part of your home, facing the South when possible, that's really good. Um, any other like really important areas of the home that we should be enhancing or facing or spending time in order to set ourselves up for success this year?
Yes. So I have one more direction that you should not face. And that is, and it's very specific. It's just a portion of the Northeast. So that is between 22 degrees and 38 degrees.
Okay.
Do not face that direction. But
Why?
because that is where the Grand Duke direction is. So Grand Duke is wherever the Grand Duke lies, you do not want to be sort of in direct confrontation with that direction. So you can sit in that Northeast area, but you can't face it directly.
Okay, that's helpful
Yeah.
to know.
Right. And then, but there's, for those people who are either looking for mentors or have a male boss or anything to do with like a male mentor or looking for one, have one, or looking to enhance, I would suggest that you face Northeast, but specifically 52 degrees to 68 degrees. So there, it is where the sun star lies this year. So it will be a really auspicious direction for you to face if you can work that into your space. Now, there is also a moon star, but I am not recommending that this year because it is in a direction that you should not sit and you should not face. So it doesn't matter that the moon is there, it's just inauspicious. So for this year, if you are working with a male boss of any sort or looking for mentorship, Northeast 52 degrees to 68 degrees is what you should focus on.
Okay. This really makes me feel like I need to activate the Compass app on my phone. But for those of you watching who are more old school or who like more antique things and you have a cool compass that you're, taking out of the drawer or off the shelf to use for this particular purpose, I'd love to see pictures of that because
yeah, or hikers.
awesome. Right. I'm a city person for the most part, so I forgot that hiking is a thing that people do.
I'm with you. I'm with
also
you.
hikers and backpackers and people who do the outdoor stuff, which is awesome. Cool. Okay, so we have a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure that we really leave people with like a really juicy thing to take away. So if you could sort of think about what's the most important thing that you want people to take away from this conversation, what is that?
So I think we've delved into a lot of very specific things for this year, and it might sound paralyzing to certain people who can't make that happen, or if they are happen to be sitting in the Southeast, facing the Southeast, like, what can I do? I would have to move to make this happen. Just know that like Feng Shui is there to empower you. It's not, it shouldn't make you feel like, oh, I'm doomed, right? Knowing this piece of information will only help you. Now you know to avoid that area, right? Know to avoid Southeast for any important calls or Northwest, right? So do the best you can, but don't let this knowledge paralyze you, and don't sort of micromanage yourself to know like exactly where you're facing. We still have to live, clutter happens, life happens. So let it empower you. If you happen to remember it, put a sticky note on your dashboard, great. If not, life goes on, right? So I think that's the takeaway I want to leave with everyone is just take it easy. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, there's other ways around it.
Awesome. I love that. I love the idea of Feng Shui as an empowerment tool rather than like another opportunity to add more judgment to our lives and how we're
Exactly.
doing things wrong all the time.
Mhm.
We have enough of that. Definitely. I see that with a lot of my clients and definitely in our society, which is super judgy already. Having the tools to empower ourselves rather than add more critique is super important.
Yep.
Um, how can people reach you? I mean, you'll be tagged on this Instagram live, and if anybody's watching this on our blog later, we'll have uh, some contact information. But what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think following me on Instagram, it would be the best way. You can DM me at Feng Shui Canary. My website, my email, they're all fengshuicanary.com or fengshuicanary@gmail.com. So those would be the best ways to reach me. And on my Instagram, I try to have posts of structural feng shui, things that you can see and touch so it's more understandable, because we've talked a lot about sort of the classical side today, and it's hard to grasp for certain people that are brand new to this. So the structural side is a lot easier to see and sort of compare your space to. So I welcome all of you to follow me on Instagram.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if anybody missed us live, you can obviously you're watching us on IGTV or on the Revel&Awe blog, revelandawe.com/blog. And you can catch up and ask your questions, and we'll try and answer them as best as possible. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.